Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. Again, John, Dave, and myself going to look back over Leinster's emphatic victory against Bath, all the other European Cup action, and look forward to our game against Wasps next weekend. So, boys, 25-11 against Bath. Victory for youth.
Well, originally we were going to actually replace the three of us with three younger pundits, but we record this so late they're all in bed. So, yeah, it was a brilliant performance. I don't think Bath knew what hit them. I was a bit worried about the selection in terms of just how callow it was, and whether or not they'd be serious about the competition, and whether it showed whether we were serious about the competition. I was wrong about that. That team could not have taken that game more seriously if their lives depended on it.
No.
And that's how Leinster used to play. Like, their lives depended on it, and they played like that on Saturday. And Bath were just swept away in a hurricane.
Smashed. Yeah. If you look at the back line that Bath had out, for example, Mike Ford or George Ford, rugby leagues, Kyle Eastman. One of my
Banahan.
really good players is Joseph.
Yeah, Jamie Joseph.
Wasn't let play.
Yeah.
Watson at the back, another guy with serious gas. Rockadunguni, who's an absolute beast. Like
even Reece Priestland on the bench.
He's a real tough guy. You've got Reece Priestland on the bench.
That Rockadunguni is the small winger on a team.
But he's like Issa, he's small, but he's tough. He's tough as nails. And then Banahan,
he's small compared to Banahan.
6'7" and 18 stone,
and wheels.
And he's pretty quick for a big guy as well. He's like a second row on speed. But they weren't in the game. Their back row, didn't hear their names hardly. Francois Lowe is a mega serious operator. Hardly heard his name mentioned. We kind of negated them in all aspects of play. But they weren't in the first half. I think they were in our 22 once. They were just eating, which for the team we had out was incredible. It's hard to, we're going to run out of superlatives in about 3 minutes of this episode because they all played so well.
Yeah, I mean, we dominated the game in every single age. We dominated in possession. We dominated in every statistical area, but not just.
We could have scored a few more tries. In fact, we were slightly naive at times that we didn't get in.
The units dominated the game as well. I mean, the front row dominated their opposition. The front five dominated. The second row, the back row. Each unit area was dominant. I don't think Ian Madigan had a particularly good game at all. But even at that, he did the basics well.
Well, before we move on, why don't we have a look at the try, Dave? Cronin came from nowhere for this, didn't he?
Yeah, it was
a little snipe around the ruck like a scrum half.
It was a lovely bit of play, actually. It just shows when the inside ball is used well, it can be very, very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. So many teams leave space at the back of the ruck. They have a pillar on each side, but when you go straight through the ruck, there's acres of space. Tonga Weah made a habit of it there one season about 3 or 4 years ago when he was playing for Northampton. He used to just run through rucks the whole time and he scored a few tries of it.
Brian Driscoll did it lovely in that final actually against Northampton.
That's right, yeah. One of the things that I noticed is actually how dominant we were physically in terms of all the collisions.
Absolutely.
All those collisions are going our way.
In particular. James Tracy was huge in the collisions.
At one point the statistics came up and I think it was 80% possession we had at one stage.
Yeah. Here we go now. Ba-doom. Bit of space.
Yeah.
Poor defending already, isn't it?
Like a rat up a drain. Well,
but he's a hard man to defend against. He has that explosive pace.
He's low slung as well.
Yeah, he has that explosive pace that very few players.
He ran through a big hole. He ran through a big hole that should have been blocked.
Yeah. Well, like I say, there were that number 20 was a pillar there, and there was a pillar on the other side, but there was quite a distance between the two of them.
It was actually, as you say, it was straight from the kickoff, and who wins the ball back? Getting his body on the ground there.
Knock on.
Mr. Cronin.
Was it knock on?
I think he had 3 touches.
You could probably argue that it was.
Bit of a Glenn Ella. He touched the ball 3 times and he scored.
Yeah. One guy we saw carrying there, one of the last carries before the try, was Ruddock, who I was immensely impressed with.
Oh, super.
Yeah.
He started doing that high carrying thing again now, hasn't he? Where he's gone into contact quite high.
I think he does that on purpose. I think he's looking to offload. It's just that people aren't on his wavelength. I think that's why he does that.
And Luke McGrath was like a terrier at the
He
back of the
was
scrum. Like
fabulous,
he
great game,
spoiled
yeah.
their more experienced scrum half. Like, I made any ball that they did win, made it almost unplayable.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he turned them over a couple
Yeah.
of times.
We turned them over a lot. The front five did a lot, but maybe it's because they're so young. They can do the dirty, hard stuff. Like, because they were playing against some big units.
Do you think?
Their 8 is
Do you think
huge.
we suckered Bath
props.
into some sort of false?
Bit of a rope-a-dope.
Well, a little bit, because they would hardly have known any of our players. I presume, well, maybe Ringrose, but they wouldn't have too
Any
much
of the young
footage on
guys.
some of them.
Yeah.
And then, like, when they saw the team sheet, I said, "Oh, look, Leinster aren't really here for a match. They're just fulfilling a fixture."
Complacency a little bit.
It's a good point to make, especially seeing as we're also celebrating that we're into the quarterfinals of this year's British and Irish Cup. That the British and Irish Cup has produced these guys, and it's not a competition that the highest echelons of English rugby are exposed to, so they would have no experience of these players. Whereas the likes of your Dooleys, your Tracys, Luke McGrath, and even guys who weren't playing, had Josh Van der Fleer had plenty of experience in that competition, and it's obviously done what it's supposed to do in terms of a level between the AIL and Pro 12 / European rugby. And what it did was it produced players who were capable of stepping into a European game, competing without the opposition knowing what they were capable of.
Yeah, well, there's the other side, but like you say, probably they were a little bit complacent, but also they wouldn't. The point you made was well made about the very little footage of, especially the front five, and it was the front five I was worried about. Ringrose I wasn't worried about. Luke McGrath I wasn't worried about. Josh Van der Fleer wasn't worried about at all. But it was none of the individuals in the front five. It was the fact
There's
that
so many
four
of
of them were kids. Like,
but that's where we kind of lost our match against Bath in the Rec in November.
exactly.
There was one particular incident. I think Sexton took a kick for goal. It dropped short. They ran it. They eventually got a scrum on around the 22.
We coughed up the penalty.
We coughed up and was awarded a penalty try under the sticks, which was essentially the difference between winning and losing that game.
Exactly.
Well, there was no danger of that happening in the scrums.
No, but it was
Saturday. It's amazing how it turned
It's
over.
absolutely amazing, and it just goes to show what 8 weeks or whatever of training as.
In fairness, there were only 2 or 3 scrums when the other guys were on. The lads trooped on around 46 minutes or something. The whole replacement.
Yeah, but they were the
front
ones.
row.
The ones that came on were the ones that suffered the humility or the humiliation of being marched back in the Rec.
I mean, there were 11 scrums in total, which is actually quite it's about par for the course.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: we didn't have a first scrum until the 21st minute.
That's right.
I remember commenting.
We said it to each other.
At the time. I can't believe this is the first scrum. And what that allowed
And the
was
second one was just on half
it
time.
allowed those younger players, inexperienced players certainly in the front five, to play themselves into the
Yeah,
match.
if they had if they had
had
been
a
a scrum
disheartening experience
off
early
the
on,
very
yeah.
first minute, it was a scrum, and they were marched back. Your confidence is shot.
But this way, that particular period of time allowed them to play themselves into the game.
Every one of them stepped up, though. I mean,
Yeah.
those 4 guys in the front 5, just to have a quick look at each of them, like Dooley, fabulous, tough as nails, big strong guy. Tracy, the power of that guy. He's
Good hands too.
And of course his hands, which were exceptional for that little give and take where he got smashed and still managed to make the ruck up the field. That was a real piece of class. That was an Easton SA type class from a hooker. Like, that's ridiculous, and also Furlong. Furlong he's big, strong. He can march a scrum backwards, but he's also got hands. He's got, it's like they're from another planet. They're like
Planet Rugby.
Planet Rugby. They've been living on for the last. They really have, because they can do their basics, but they can also do some fancy stuff, which is pretty incredible. And Ross, we haven't even mentioned Ross Maloney, who was man of the match. Canny, what an experienced head on young shoulders.
Well, I thought he was the outstanding individual in terms of.
I was just going to say that even Sky were bigging him up, and saying a future leader and the young Paul O'Connell and all the rest of it.
Oh, I wouldn't quite go that
no,
far.
I know, but he proved that he is certainly there for the future.
Oh, he's a player.
And
He's definitely a player now. He's
when you see the way that he functioned in the line out, and like he's up against some very big men, some very experienced men in their pack, and he stood his own.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously he's up against their captain for a start, who's and a real go-to player for them, the guy who kept the club together during the worst of the Burgess year, as it was.
He looks so young. I can't believe he's 34. I mean, I remember him as a kid playing, and looking. He was in the back row for a while. He played 8, and he still looks quite young. He had a young face on him, even though he's
an old face by the end of the match.
Player. That's true.
No, but the thing about it, I mean, Ross Maloney, I'd say Devin Toner now knows how Malcolm O'Kelly felt after that game against Castres back in 2009, after he saw the future, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
it didn't slow Malcolm
Well, Mike
O'Kelly
McCarthy's getting on. You know, whether he plays next season or not, we don't know. But you need somebody coming through. And a few years ago they were looking for the Route 66.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you've got a guy coming through who's a big lad,
6'6".
Yeah.
And there's another lad coming behind him, I believe, who's serious damage as well.
You have to take your hat off to two particular individuals. I'm sure there's a lot more, but one is Cullen for having the conviction to go with youth and to pick those lads. And we'd seen them in various stages over the course of the season. Ringrose obviously going to be an exceptional player, but you've other lads like Dooley's played well. Tracy's, as we've mentioned, has played very well when he's got his chance. Van der Fleer, etc. But for Cullen to actually go out in a European Cup game to give these guys a chance, and I heard him interviewed, and he was like saying it's like a bit of a Dave O'Leary. He was saying, "My baby's my it's like a parent." He was nervous about the 6 guys making their debut going out to play.
He was some proud parent at the end of it, though.
But the other one is
McQuilkin. Jim Allender was the next day.
Yeah.
But the other guy I was thinking of was McQuilkin as well. I mean, since he's come back,
he's made a huge difference. I think massive.
In the last 4 or 5 games, we've conceded 1 try. And that was against Munster, which was kind of a little bit of a dodgy one. But to hold someone like Bath to
well, with their all talented All England backline, it is, and they're good players. They are good players. I mean, let's not make any mistake. I mean, if England were to put out that backline, you couldn't. Well, maybe with the exception of Bannon, because it's getting on a bit, but you couldn't argue too much with it. That's a good international standard backline. A lot of guys. How many guys in that team beat the All Blacks? There's
quite a few of them in there. Yeah, Joseph was in there, wasn't he?
So I mean, that's something that no Irish international has ever experienced. So it has to be taken. And the thing is that what he's done is he's given himself a huge amount of breathing room, Leo, in terms of he's instantly expanded his squad.
Oh yeah,
instantly. Now he can put them into the regular rotation.
Those guys are gonna make some impression during the Six Nations.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you hope so. Well, no. Come on, we're probably putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
In the Six Nations, they certainly are, because I'm not going to suggest that they're going to get called up to the Irish squad. No way. But
no, I didn't mean that.
No, I know you didn't. No, I know that.
Yeah.
But we've got to back it up now. We've had false dawns in the past. This team has got to back it up in Coventry next week, regardless of whether he brings back the Sextons and the Heaslips and whoever.
I'd say there'll be an element of rotation, because these guys have deserved to be rotated the same way as all the top level, if you like, the elite players are rotated. And there's an element of, Wasps need to win this match.
They sure do.
We also need to win this match for ourselves. But there's an element of we also have to. We don't want to be Racing Metro in 2013. We don't want to do that, because we know how shit we felt when they did that. So if Leo thinks the best team involves a blending of those guys and our experienced players, I mean, Jamie Heaslip is supposedly back. Johnny Sexton is available.
Luke, I guess.
Luke again. Pick the best 15. It doesn't matter now, because what he's done is he's proved that his squad has gone from, 38 to all 41 guys in that squad are capable of being put on the pitch now.
Well, I think you've nailed it there when you said it makes a huge difference to our squad. It's like we've just wheeled in 7 experienced players from nowhere. Effectively, they'd all played Pro 12. Some of them had played in Europe, but none of them had ever started in Europe. And now, you're kind of looking at Josh van der Fleer, Tyg Furlong, Luke McGrath as experienced players now and leaders.
Yeah. But I just looking back, say our last European triumph in Twickenham against Ulster back in 2012. There was only one guy from the starting team last week to the starting team back 3.5 years ago.
And he left in the interim.
He'd retired. But there's only one guy. Now, I know it was a good view on that.
No, it's a valid point. Actually, it's a very interesting point.
But I think this team, you know, like obviously that team that beat Ulster was kind of going down a little bit. There was obviously very notable retirements, and fellas even that were still playing were getting a bit past it or a bit on. But it's hard for a team, like it kind of has to go back and redefine itself to become its own individual rather than a continuation on. It's kind of stepped out of the shadow of that triple winning team, but now it's kind of their own team, or it's starting to become their own team.
I've saying for the last 10 years that, you know, professional sport is a series of peaks and troughs. And
It's managing it.
what the academy does is it makes the troughs shorter and the peaks longer. If you've got your academy system working properly. Now, obviously we had our peak in 2013 or 2012, and it's been a slight. But I mean, who would if we were playing Wasps, if the European season was out starting now, you know, you'd really have to fancy us.
Wasps are a good outfit though.
Wasps are very good
Certainly
outfit.
are, yeah.
They were extraordinarily unfortunate against Toulon, and that'll actually be the mark of them. If you remember Northampton, after we did what we did to them in their first game in Europe the next season, they got absolutely
Munster, was it?
holed beneath the waterline by Ronan O'Gara with the last kick of the match.
That's right.
And that was the end of them for 2 years. They had to go away and rebuild, and that was the end of that. You know, that team, they haven't quite reached that peak again since. Things like that can have a psychological effect on a club and have a psychological effect on players. Some guys who might be thinking, is this a natural end to my time at this club and will I move on, etc., etc. What the question Wasps have to answer is what happened last Saturday and what hopefully we can do to them this Saturday. Going to be that
We'll
point.
see.
I don't know. But it's a question that what will tell us a lot about this Wasps team. It'll tell us a lot about the quality and the longevity of it. It's how they respond to what happened last week. It's how you respond to adversity that makes you a team. It's not how you respond when you're winning. It's how you respond to adversity.
Well, we shall see. But
They're in a good position. They're on 15 points.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So if they win against us, just a regular win, up to 19, probably qualify with 19.
See, this
Oh,
is
they
why
will, yeah.
I don't think you can ever trust baldy little scrum halves. If Simpson makes that kick, it's all over.
It is,
You know?
and I would tell you, it's like we mentioned last week, the Connacht guy giving away
Exactly.
penalty.
Similar.
a similar kind of thing. I'm not saying it did kind of cost his team the game by not making that touch. It was like the kicker in the American football a couple of weeks ago. You know, that's your job. You have to do it, and if you don't, you suffer the
Pat Lam
consequences.
was less than impressed with them again this weekend, actually, because they seem to have
Getting
They're
into
on
the
a
habit
serious,
of
on
losing
a serious
to death.
losing streak.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate for Connacht.
it's out of their hands now, isn't it?
Well, it's out of their
They have
hands,
to get a
but,
bonus point against Breve, no, against Ensai,
which they will.
which they may do.
I'd say they will.
Then I think they still need a favour from Breve, and so I'm not sure.
I think they're going to be away.
I think they're going
Yeah.
to be away.
Maybe it's out of their hands for a home one.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that could well be it. But it's unfortunate for them. But you know, that's the thing. I mean, Wasps were very good against Toulon.
Yeah.
But I didn't see anything
But
that frightened me. Except,
No, that Toulon
Yeah.
team is nowhere near as good as it was
No.
when we
No.
played them in the quarterfinal 2 years
But you know what
ago.
it still is? It's still
Powerful.
It might, yeah, but it's also there's guys in that team. Whatever about mercenaries and all that kind of stuff, right? There's guys in that team who just really fucking hate losing, and that's why they score that try. That's why teams like Toulon, like Leinster, like Munster when they were in their prime, like Leicester, that's why they get that try.
But those guys are class.
Oh, yeah.
There's no one on that team that would make the error that Joe Simpson did.
no.
If
No.
you look at the Bath team that was out this weekend, and you look at the Toulon team that's out any weekend, like Bath were kind of, you know, when you get to player number 19, 20, 21, you're looking at, you know, a few iffy ones. Toulon, there's no iffy ones. They've got, and they're all power.
And they've got loads of lads on the
Look
bench.
what they
that
did.
are-
That's what I'm saying exactly. Look what they did to us in Lansdowne Road.
Well, that's it. Our first
They just
15 is every bit
overpowered
as
us.
good. Our first 15 is every bit as good as Toulon's first 15. The problem is the next 15.
Well, you
And
see,
that's no
but
slight
there's
on
a
our
bunch.
players.
There's a bunch of guys. I think I saw it there was there's 8 of the starting team of our starting team were aged between 20 and 24.
That's
So
what I'm saying.
those
It's not-
guys need 2 years playing at this level, at the European Cup level, and then when you're bringing through, you know, a front row that's one like we did when we were winning European Cups. When you're taking off one bunch of front rows and bringing on like for like nearly, that's when you're going to have the squad depth. We don't have it at the moment,
No.
but there's 8
Getting
young
there.
lads that played the other day. just a bit of
Well,
experience.
they've taken squad depth though to a ridiculous level. I
They
think
have.
that's
Oh,
the
they
thing.
have. Yeah.
But what impressed me about Toulon on Sunday wasn't the size of the names. It was the size of the hearts to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Never say that.
it's easy for them to lose that game. Everyone thinks, oh, they've been very brave. Wasps, brilliant. What a great game. Last minute, blah 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 blah. Let's go home and spend our paychecks. But they didn't do that.
But the world class players turned up.
Yeah, the world class. That's what world class players do. That's the difference between a Matt Guiteau or a Drew Mitchell, who are really world class, and a Danny Cipriani, will say.
A disappointing result for Ulster.
Ulster have nobody to blame but themselves. To be perfectly honest, they just weren't good enough.
Well, they weren't, but like Saracens are a bit of a bogey team for them now.
They
They've
really
had
are.
some
Aren't they? There's
really
a mental thing about it at
like,
this stage.
I went to see them when we were in the Challenge Cup over in Wasps, and they were playing in Munster. We were all playing Munster, Ulster, and Leinster were playing. I went to the 3 games, and they were slaughtered in Twickenham by Saracens, and they really thought they were going to win. I think Ferris was playing that day. We was still playing anyway, and
They're like our Edinburgh.
they've had them a
Rebels
few
8
times.
years ago.
Well,
Just
they've had them a
couldn't
few
beat them.
times since.
They're in their heads. They are in their heads. And the thing.
Also, they're now the form team in Europe.
Well, here's the other
They're
side.
racing on themselves.
If Ulster get 5 points against Iona and nothing untoward happens, who are they going to get in the quarterfinals?
Probably Saracens.
Saracens. So, I mean, they're going to have to get over it sooner or later. I mean, they really do.
well,
Because
you never
otherwise,
know.
they're not going to progress.
There have been a few Northampton, I think, and Biarritz. I remember a few years ago where Northampton were in Biarritz's group, and they were hosed twice, and then they got them as 8th seed. They got them in the quarter final and went down and beat them. I think it was Northampton.
Yeah, but were Biarritz in Northampton's head the way that Saracens are in Ulster's head after how many fixtures? At this
Probably
stage?
not.
Be
But
6 or 7,
You know,
anyway, is it?
so
all you need is a little touch of complacency from Saracens,
yeah, yeah.
Well, one guy that again
and a miracle from Ulster.
put a little bit of or put himself in the shop window for Joe Schmidt is Stuart McCluskey.
Oh, yeah,
He had another
yeah.
superb game.
I think it's a matter of McCluskey +1 at this stage. I
think
it's
he's
I don't
gonna
think
walk
there's
into the team.
Yeah, it's McCluskey +1.
I think Jared Payne is going to become Felix Jones and move to full back and give Rob Kearney a bit of competition for a change, and then you're going to have McCluskey and Henshaw with Ringrose to come in over the next year or so.
Or Luke, perhaps.
But either of them get a knock. You can bring in either of those guys.
There's
Luke
a bit
or
of depth
Ringrose.
there anyway. Is the important.
Well, you think that, Drico and Darce
Were there for so
were there
long.
for 10 years or more, and when they came to the end of their careers, we're kind of going, my God, what are we going to do? And you're moving 2 full-backs into the centre to try and manufacture something. Now you've got loads of these kids coming through.
You've got Luke Marshall.
You've got Marshall, you've got
quite a few people.
Apparently,
Cave,
Holding will be back.
Holding.
Hmm.
So you've got, they mightn't be as good as Darcy and Drico, but
If he stays fit, I'd say Ian Humphreys won't get into the 23 too often because he can cover out half.
No.
Holding.
And he's crap.
Yeah, there is that also.
yeah. And then the other Irish team played the weekend was Munster. They got the show back on the road.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good to see.
Yeah, cracks well and truly papered over.
Unfortunately, I think you're right, Dave.
Oh no, I know I'm right. I've seen it happen before.
Oh yeah.
You're right. But
Well, it's amazing.
There's nothing they love more than watching a dead cat bounce.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've listened to a few reports on the radio and interviews, and everyone seems to forget
Nothing to see here. Move on.
the other fixtures and results for the last 3 months.
they've a couple of decent fixtures in the bag in the league from early on during the World Cup. They got a few wins. Like they were actually up the top of the league for a while in the early days, and that will possibly stand to them because they're obviously out of Europe like ourselves. So they're going to be focused on the league. They might have a good run in the league. I can see them getting into the top 4.
But there was noticeable difference in the team. Their defence was far stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're putting their bodies on the line.
they were, but like they had
Said it
you know what
themselves.
I mean?
I wonder if there's
they wouldn't be able to
somebody
go.
came in and took a quick look at the defence and maybe I don't know.
Maybe so.
Spitballing.
But no, but like they
Some
had
guy
to,
with an Irish name, wasn't I heard?
they had to go down to get a pint of milk, and there was going to be people if they didn't turn up this weekend.
Yeah.
It amazes me that Munster players are the only players that actually live in Ireland. Because Leinster players never have to go down and get a pint of milk.
No,
and
they've
Ulster
got their.
players,
The
and
butler
Connacht
gets
players-
them a pint of
Ulster are
milk.
the only players who ever go to the shops. I mean, it amazes me how that's the case.
I mean, who
Did
goes to the shops
you
in this?
happen to see Quinlan and Foley being interviewed by Sky?
I wasn't even sure if that was
heard it
them
was
in the
very
same
awkward.
shot or it was CGI'd on a green screen because
well,
they weren't.
it was
you notice
funny-
They weren't exactly looking at one another.
Never once did Foley move his eyes in any direction towards Quinlan.
Well,
Oh,
when you
spurned
consider
love
they,
is the worst love.
when you consider they were in the same back row, packing them beside each other for years and
And the
years.
same club, Shannon. They were in Shannon
Yeah.
before there was even
Before
a
that.
Munster.
So, but like it's got to be awkward. I mean, if Quinlan really stuck the boot in, and rightly or wrongly, they certainly deserved a bit of boot sticking in that week.
But like,
You'd feel sorry for Foley.
I'm sure, has stuck the boot into the players. If he didn't, then
It's as simple as this. You can either be a professional media, a professional pundit in the sports media, or you can be pals with the players. You can't have both. You just can't.
well, fair play to
Because-
Quinlan. You have to.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. I think that Quinlan was absolutely right. And if Foley doesn't like, if Foley feels that because it's Foley's job to protect his players and protect
course.
his team, then he's absolutely right too. Neither of them are wrong. Neither of them are wrong. They're both right to act the way they act and to react to what they saw the way they
I
act.
thought it was utterly cringeworthy. And at
Oh,
the
it's
same
very
time, they're
cringeworthy.
like, you're kind of hearing or reading reports, and they're saying, "God, it wasn't great to see Foley with a smile on his face." I didn't really see him smiling too much.
I think people mistake smiles and grimaces. It looked more like a grimace to me than a smile.
Well, your second favourite player, Dave, looks like he might. He got his 5th try of the season.
Yeah, he won the Battle of the Bluffers. So he did after losing the Battle of the Bluffers the week
You
before.
edited that out last week, Dave. Actually, yeah, we were slagging you about that last week, and you edited it out.
I mean, you can go on about it so much. I mean, CJ Stander played well on Saturday, so suddenly he's.
We'd
brilliant.
just like to say that
Let's-
2/3
let's-
of
We'll see if Joe Schmidt agrees
No, but
with
let's
you.
see if you
or-
leave this in.
well, let's-
2/3 of this podcast team think CJ Stander and Sergio Parise are good players. 1/3 of it doesn't.
No.
Which
Well, I think-
one doesn't?
I'll say this much for CJ Stander. How well did he play last week?
He was the
And
best
how
of
well
a bad
How well
lot.
did he play against Leinster?
He was one of the
the
few
best
players.
one.
And
that
how
actually-
well did he play against Connacht?
Dave, he was
against
one-
Owen Masterson.
Dave-
I mean, come on, like the guy
Dave,
looks
he-
great
just
in the right
because it-
circumstances.
No,
The
just
guy looks
because
great every week. He puts his heart in there.
just because a team loses doesn't make the
No,
guy
it doesn't.
playing
No, I
on the
agree with
team
you.
bad.
I actually thought he was.
And
he
he's
was.
probably
He
wo-
was the best Munster player against us.
and he was the best.
And against that
he was the
Francais
best.
last week.
Correct.
But I still
So-
don't think he's.
Okay.
I don't think he's
To play that
great.
well in a shite team is
Yeah.
pretty good. Like,
And
when
to get the plaudits.
and he's also targeted because he's the only bloody man doing it, and he's carrying in there, so he gets targeted by the opposition.
I
as
will
well.
say. I will say that he is Munster's best player.
he is.
Possibly their best player. Pete Earls, I still think, played particularly well
Did-
last
he
week.
did.
Apples and oranges.
But
Anyway,
And one result that was really notable was Ospreys beating Claremont.
yeah.
was
I'm
a
not sure
great
if Claremont are on slide or whether Ospreys just.
Well, not only did Ospreys beat Claremont, Ospreys did it without Dan Bigger at the, for the half the match.
and they have it in Sam Davis actually. Nigel Davis, is young fella, he stepped up
Yeah.
really well. It was very impressive.
For anyone under the age of 50, Nigel Davis is a Welsh rugby union player from the old days,
Who's
Black and white.
just
from olden
about
times.
just about under 50 himself, or maybe just about over 50 himself. But they were, anybody who beats Claremont anywhere is impressive, and that was an impressive run. And they've now got it in their own hands. They have to get down to Exeter, unfortunately.
Yeah, but they are top of the pool. They're on 16 points.
They are, but Claremont are at home to
Yeah.
Bordeaux, and they're getting 5 points, surer than any result in the, in the thing.
Bordeaux are notoriously
They're away from home in Claremont.
yeah.
There's no way they're not
Well,
getting
well-
5 points.
Claremont are 2 points behind Ospreys.
And so
Yeah, I know.
So-
That's
so-
what I'm saying. They have it.
all Ospreys have to do is win.
If
They have it
Ospreys
in their own hands,
Yeah.
but all I'm saying is they've got down to Exeter, and Exeter are a tough out team,
They are-
and
they
they
are,
beat them in the Liberty.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
now Ospreys doesn't play for.
They certainly do, and Exeter don't have anything to play for because they've no hope of qualifying.
And there was one other result that just was notable. Racing hammered Scarlets.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
64-14.
It was
That's
embarrassing.
embarrassing. And you have Scarlets. I don't know how Scarlets are top of the league because
They're
they
a
haven't.
gnarly old
Yeah,
team.
but they haven't won. I think they're on some 5 or 6 game losing
They
streak.
did. They made hay while
They
they
did.
the
definitely
sun
made
shined.
hay while the sun shone, and now the sun's gone, and so are their points.
However, what I will say about that matchup in particular, because the Dragons aren't in the Champions Cup, Scarlets are without doubt the team with the least money in the whole Champions Cup, and Racing are up there with, they're in the top
Yeah.
2 or 3 of the most money.
I'm pretty sure
They
that
got
the-
Dan
they're
Carter in
defending his
there.
team in France, Racing.
You
I think
know,
it's Racing Toulouse.
like Hadley
Hadley
Parks,
yeah.
Hadley Parks and Regan King, great and all a player Regan King is. He's
Was.
735 years old, and
he probably played with Nigel Davis.
he probably played with Nigel
Actually, he
Davis's
could well have
dad.
played with Nigel Davis.
So, you know, they're scraping together. They've got some good battlers. Like they've got DTH. They got off Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
They've got is it Jeff Haster? No, he's the Ospreys. They've got the 7 Barkley.
Yeah.
That they also got off Glasgow. You know, they've got some good players in there, but they've no real world class players.
Samson Lee, they've got, he's a good player.
Samson Lee's a
Liam
good player.
Williams.
Yeah, they've got a lot of good
Well, Liam
players.
Williams is out.
Yeah, he's
I know he's
good.
out, but he's the player.
He is a good
Yeah.
player. They've a lot of good players. They've a lot of 7 out of 10 players when they're playing well.
And they
But
are.
when they want to turn it on and the sun's on their backs, they're a fine team. They
Yeah.
struggled, I think, during the winter when the pitches are heavier and they can't run.
Well, I think the problem is this. I mean,
They've
you
also
use
got-
the phrase "suns on the black" as a cliche, but it's literally true in their case because they played well in the end of summer, beginning of autumn, and they'll play well again tail end of April. But by then they'll be out of it,
Yeah.
Well,
and they won't get to play in May.
They also have you know they've got a lot of injury worries. They've got their second rows basically they're down 2 or 3 of them, and they don't have the depth. So, you know, but having said all of that, it was still a serious
They didn't look.
humiliation.
You see, teams will get walloped. Better teams will get walloped by worse teams, but so those teams sometimes show pride, and I don't think Scarlets did. When I saw it, they didn't exactly look to be killing themselves.
Well, they did come back into it they scored 2 tries at the beginning of the second half.
That's
and
they
then
were
they fell over
in
and
French
lay down.
rugby. Scarlets nearly got a fanny in French rugby terms. In French rugby, if you nil a team, it's called a fanny.
Okay.
Well,
Une fanny.
But then we've quite a few comments and questions from Twitter and Facebook. So
I was able to use the internet to get these questions. So we'll go with the first one and we'll just plough through them. Mark Hearn asks, after last weekend, some of the senior players have been shown up by the drive and passion of the younger lads. Who would you pick as the first 15 at the moment? And just kind of also on that question, Stephen Harris asks, same question as he did last week indeed, thoughts on playing some of the younger fellas in the European games. And he doesn't think Leinster could be accused of being disrespectful to the competition. They gave it a good shake-up, more like.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Did we not answer his question last week?
Yeah, I think we did, but I think I'd say we both suggest.
probably didn't.
We'd all kind of say that for next week you pick the best 15. But what Leo have done is he's expanded the squad that's available to him as realistic options.
I was very
Yeah.
surprised that of the team that he selected. I thought he was going to go with a far more experienced team,
Yeah, we were
particularly
all
with the Six
surprised,
Nations looming.
Yeah.
I'm delighted what he did. I remember when the team came out, I sent you a text
Yeah.
and was delighted with it.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was some criticism from elsewhere, but I thought that kind of made the difference, and you saw the difference that Cullen's made to this squad than O'Connor did for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know
For sure.
I know those players were a year or 2 years younger,
Mm-hmm.
but even when there was other guys coming through, O'Connor
weren't being developed.
just seemed to be reluctant to give,
Especially backs.
especially
Yeah,
backs.
He was,
Now,
the
he-
one criticism is he didn't give an awful lot
But
of
the
game
forwards,
time to
Dave,
backs.
the forwards that he did blood was out of necessity. It wasn't. It was like this. There was no necessity to bring those 6 guys through in this game. Do you know what I mean?
No, but it was an opportunity.
An opportunity, and
opportunity.
you use it. Whereas
that had been created by previous necessity.
yes, but in O'Connor's reign, you know, like he had Lottie Kiri in there. He had a 28-year-old guy on the wing from a club. Now, you know, he did well enough when he was there,
He did. He was
But
a
he-
leading try scorer.
but he ain't there anymore. Do you know what I mean?
He scored more tries individually than we've scored in Europe, than any back, all Leinster backs scored. And that's one thing that we have to, that's the next level against Wasps. Is to start scoring tries, because we've got every other part of our game, with the possible exception of them all, again, is now working really well. So now we have to take it to the next level.
To get to the question though, who would you pick as the first 15? It's a really interesting question, because
I always say the first 23. I always think that's more.
To take Sean O'Brien and Josh van der Fleer, if you'd have said at the beginning of the season Sean O'Brien and Josh van der Fleer, it would have been chuckles. And you know, Josh who? We're talking about Sean O'Brien here.
But he's pushing Sean O'Brien.
now-
He's poking him and he's going, you have to perform.
Yeah.
And you have to be like Drew Mitchell and the boys in Toulon. You're the superstar. You
Yeah.
start playing like
I
that.
can see them being played at 7 and 8 and used in that Pocock Cooper thing. I can see I can see such great rotation now in the league, because let's face it, the league's all we got. I can see some serious rotation. Luke McGrath and Owen Redden, kind of similar players in a way too. That gap has just closed so dramatically. A lot of naysayers about Luke McGrath over his pass and yada yada yada. The guy is class, and his pass has come on to a level that's
But the thing I always like
perfectly
about
fine for me anyway.
is his
brain.
the way he sees the game.
Exactly.
He sees the game the same way that the good scrum halves always do. I mean,
He's also tough.
yeah.
Niggly,
His
can
pass
break.
is fast enough because he sees what's happening so much faster than everyone else. The way a good scrum half should.
Well, that's why I say he's like Redden, because he has a break.
Yeah.
He has good, he can get the ball out quickly. He's a great decision maker, and he's great at driving the forwards around. They're all things that Owen Redden is great at. So I can see him coming up as the understudy. I have a lot less worries about us at scrum half now, and he could turn out to be the first scrum half we've developed successfully in. Cross your fingers that he
All we
doesn't
have to do
get.
is get him into an Irish jersey, and we'd have done the job. So
There's another one, and then you've Ringrose, of course.
There's
obviously.
another question we got that ties into this, and it's from Dara Faulkner, and he says, as good a job as Leo is doing integrating young talent into the team, I still feel like one young player, Cathal Marsh, has been treated unfairly by the coaching staff. When he was given the opportunity to shine in the early months of the season, he did so, and yet I don't believe he has started a match for the first team since November. Considering the fact that Madigan departs for Bordeaux in the summer, should the coaching staff be making more of an effort to include Marsh in starting panels for big matches and begin to see him as a new understudy for Sexton? So that kind of ties into what you're saying about the development of younger players.
It's an interesting one. The rest of the season, he probably will get, he undoubtedly will get more time during the Six Nations. It's a little bit like Marty Moore and Tyg Furlong, where Marty Moore was a year ahead of Tyg Furlong, but now Tyg Furlong seems to be, have surpassed him. The rumblings, and I don't really know because we haven't seen enough of either of them in the first team. The rumblings are that Ross Byrne might come up on the outside and take a step ahead of Cathal Marsh. Whether he does
Well,
or
he was
whether he
favoured
doesn't,
with a selection, if you recall.
yeah.
Ross Byrne
Mm-hmm.
with a start. I actually thought
So
that Cathal Marsh might have got a bench spot on last Saturday. Just in terms of getting him some game time with the senior team before the Six Nations, because is Madigan playing all that well?
Did he play in the BNI team?
he did,
He did, yeah.
and they tore it up.
They tore it.
But
Yeah,
maybe
it
they felt
was
that-
against Mosley again.
But maybe they felt that they needed him to have 80
Mhm.
rather than 10.
Mosley is to our A team what Burgwan are to the senior team.
Well, that's a very relevant point to that question, is that this week and next week we've got B&I Cup games. After that we don't, and we also don't have all our internationals. So I think Cathal Marsh is going to get,
Next
and he's
week has got
shown
a really
enough.
good test. Next week is Rotherham, who are a good side.
Yeah.
So
They're not
that'll
doing
be
well.
They're not doing well, but they're a good side with good players. That'll be a good test for him. I mean, physically it'll be a good test.
He has shown enough in the bits he has done early in the season to warrant a good, that the guy's saying that he's been
Darragh.
overlooked. Darragh saying that he's been overlooked, and he has done enough to warrant not being overlooked. And I don't think Zebre in the RDS, you're bound to see him there.
Dragons.
The Dragons, I feel we're going to send a good team to the Dragons. We owe them a good slap from last year.
Zebre are one of the Pro 12's best performers in European competition. This
Yeah,
year.
that's true.
They're going very well, actually, in fairness to them.
But I have a feeling we're going to send a few serious heavy hitters over to the Dragons to soften their cough. They're coming quite well as well in the Challenge
Yeah,
Cup,
they are,
and
yeah.
Hallam Amos is back. He's a fabulous player.
They're a good player.
They're a good player. One of their very good players.
Well, he's the only one they'll have at that stage of the season.
When's
available.
Toby leaving?
At the end of the season. Taulupe.
No, Toby.
No, he's Taulupe.
Any more questions, Dave?
Yeah, we
What's
have.
his name?
Now we're moving away from Leinster into the more general Irish thing, and it's kind of a question that's a bit apropos because obviously Madigan is leaving, And there's all the talk about Marty Moore. So Ricardo Tiernig asks, do we know the rationale behind the IRFU reducing the number of central contracts? This development would seem to be contributing to Irish internationals considering a playing future abroad. Is the IRFU falling into the trap of knowing the price of everything and the value of nothing? And he'd love to hear our views. I don't know why.
Possibly. He's one of him and those other two guys on the dog are the people who really need to hear our views on this. There's a couple of things on it, right? One is the obvious reason. Money. That's beginning and end of. I mean, there were at one stage 30, and I think there's about 17 now.
Mm-hmm.
But they're being a bit cleverer with it now. I think we don't know for sure if Marty Moore is going abroad, but Ian Madigan's definitely going abroad, and I think they're starting to let the non-essential players, if you like, drift.
There was a very
the not starting
there's
15
a very
players
interesting
drift
article
abroad.
in the 42,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that the IRFU had employed a kind of a business analyst
Mm-hmm.
to examine, what players and their injuries and
Yeah,
their
a bit
value
of a sabermetric approach.
It
been
was
taken.
a bit
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
and I was surprised to hear it. And apparently, that's what they based their decision on whether to give Marty Moore a contract.
Yeah.
There's an element of Marty Moore that he does carry an awful lot of injuries. But he's a brilliant tight head. He really is.
Well, I like him. I think
And
he's going to be lost to
He's a
Leinster.
fantastic
But
footballer. He's a really good. And people look at him and they think, oh, he's a bit of a, because he doesn't really look like an athlete, shall we say?
Mhm.
But he's a fantastic footballer. He really is. He's got great hands. When he clamps over a ball, latches on, you're not getting him off it. Like it's just
he
as simple as
doesn't
that.
seem to be that well rated in Irish.
Yeah,
Irish camps,
I heard, now this is just pure rumour and speculation, we say, that he was being looked at by Munster quite seriously 18 months ago, and that they took a step back when they saw his fitness test results.
Yeah,
That's what I heard. Now that could be based on absolutely nothing, only pure speculation, but that's what I heard.
Ronan O'Gara didn't go to the '99 World Cup because of that reason.
Yeah.
because he couldn't bench press to a minimum.
If you've got
Seems
a
ridiculous.
statistical
Like-
analysis approach, because there's two ways of judging. There's one is gut and the other is numbers.
Mhm.
And the best way to do it is the part where the two of them meet. But at certain times, the statistical analysis department will be stronger than, if you like, the pure scouting department, and they will base decisions based on numbers rather than
Well,
feel.
I
Well,
know,
like,
but,
there
but
is
you
a-
see, sorry, John.
Yeah, go
Say in the NFL they have the combine and get all the college players in. Like the guy who's won 4 Super Bowls, Tom Brady, scored so badly in it, like they were surprised that he ever got a professional contract. And all of a sudden, he's playing for nearly 20 years. He's won 4 Super Bowls. He's
The most advanced academy in English football is Southampton's. They have virtually every single piece of scientific equipment known to man available to them. There's a guy called Les Reed runs it, and he employs an entire mathematical department to work out all the statistical things. But he also employs a full team of scouts, and he won't sign a player unless he meets fitness requirement A, B, C, and D, and he gets a positive scouting report from the player. Because he says the statistics on their own are worthless. And a guy
Obviously.
looking at a player and getting a gut view of him on its own is worthless. It's where the 2 points meet that you have. That's where the value is.
And the attitude.
Yeah.
The guy has to have an attitude.
But the process has to be strongly managed. Otherwise, you get one side or the other becoming dominant. We'd say we're talking about big talk about Liverpool and their transfer committee today in all the English newspapers, into broadsheets indeed. And that was a numbers-driven approach rather than. That's where the numbers approach had taken control over the scouting approach, and we saw the worth of that yesterday.
Well, I just think that the IRFU are maybe taking a little bit of a leaf out of the book of the Welsh and possibly the Scottish, where you want to keep your Sean O'Briens, your Rob Kearneys, your Johnny Sextons, it's a pain in the hole.
the marquee players, you mean?
Exactly, it's a pain in the hole having Johnny Sexton in France. Having Ian Madigan in France is not such a big pain in the hole because you've got Paddy Jackson, you've got whatever. You might get a
There's
chance
also
to
a commercial
develop
side to it that
one or two other guys.
certain players are worth
Holding
more than others commercially.
Yeah,
That has to be factored in. It's a professional sport.
but I think certainly the first 15 and maybe a few beyond that, you want to be controlling them, you want to have them contracted in Ireland. But there's actually a benefit to be derived from having someone like Marty Moore playing his rugby on the dime of the PRL. They're paying his food bills, which must be considerable. They're paying all of his other stuff, and he's just a short plane right away.
It's only
If
a
a tight head prop goes down,
It's only a benefit if they come back into the system.
yes, but
That's the side of it.
that's the risk you take.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Well, that's the risk. That is the risk element of it. I mean, having somebody over there on somebody else's dime and all that, it's great, but it's no use to you unless they come and they
no
bring
use
that
to
back.
Leinster.
It's no use to Leinster or indeed Ireland unless they bring that back into the Irish system.
But it's no use to Leinster from the minute he goes over there.
No.
But it's Ireland that may benefit.
Yeah.
Like the Welsh have learned that lesson the hard way, that you don't want your marquee players abroad. But Scotland are an excellent example, because Scotland only have 2 teams,
The game is dying in Scotland.
and they can't
Still is,
give
really.
enough. They can't give enough game time to enough players to form a Scottish team. They've got to have exiles. We've got 4 teams. We've got a better fit. We can make a better fist, but we haven't got 14 teams or 12 teams that we can spread our players around. So there has to be a little element to this, and the guys to send out are the guys who are on the peripherals. So Ian Madigan, in fairness to him, has been in every.
And sometimes people get a bad.
They may not have wanted to lose him.
Other
every
fellas from
place.
different clubs would be criticised for not moving. Paul O'Connell and Donnacha O'Callaghan were the second rows. Or Brian O'Driscoll and Gordon Darcy were the centres. And if somebody hung around as a centre for Leinster, knowing that they're only going to get game time when Drico and Gordon were away, then they're seen as nearly not being ambitious. Whereas someone decides to leave, like Madigan or Moore, you have to kind of begrudgingly say to them, well, fair play to you for going and wanting to play first class.
I wouldn't even be begrudging. I'm genuinely sorry that they're leaving. Because
so
I
am
think
I,
that they add something to the
But you don't want to see
Leinster
I don't
rugby.
want to see anyone leave.
No, I don't want to see
And
anyone
the only
leave.
way
I don't begrudge them, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
but the only way I want to see them leaving is if somebody better comes in their place.
Yeah.
Like say, for instance, when Sexton left, that was a disaster.
Yeah.
Because the guy that came in clearly wasn't as good as Sexton was. However, if there's, if you've got, say, Ian Madigan coming through, but if somebody like Ringrose is coming into the fore, then you say, well, my God, like this guy's coming into the squad. This guy could be a starter for the Lions in 6 years' time.
Absolutely.
Madigan won't be.
No, that's true. So a bit of room to develop.
It's always tough. We have one more question, and it's kind of it's on a different topic than any of these. Indeed, it's about Joe Schmidt, 2017 Lions coach. Thoughts?
Well, haven't they come out recently on who they are? But hasn't somebody come out in the last few days saying that Gatland's still the favourite and yada yada yada? Would Joe Schmidt suit a Lions tour? Is the question that's come up. Maybe.
I think it's an interesting question actually, because the requirements of a Lions coach
quite different.
Yeah.
Well, I could see him, the way to take a year sabbatical, I could see him taking every minute of that year to prepare for it.
Oh yeah, he'd love
Whereas,
that.
some other lads might go, well, I'll go and spend a time watching Ireland train and England train.
The thing is, if Joe Schmidt ever wants to coach the All Blacks, he has to either beat them with Ireland or beat them with the Lions, because winning Heineken Cups, winning Six Nations, they couldn't give a rat's ass about that.
Well, they were proved right to be not impressed by it when you see the World Cup.
Yeah, that means nothing to them. All they want is the only guys they're interested in hiring are guys who are better than the ones they have, and if you do that by beating them. So
the new 5th or 6th playoff they have in the World Cup now is called the Six Nations.
So there is. I mean, is he in the running? He'd have to be, especially if he wins the Six Nations this year.
Of
That's
course
3
he's
in a
in
row.
the
He has
running.
to be in the running. Would he be interested in it? Again, I'd say so, because he's an ambitious guy. He wants to. I mean, it is a move up again from an international job.
If he's taken it, I'd like to see him nailed down until 2019.
Oh,
with
definitely,
Ireland,
Oh yeah.
as a condition
When he
of
comes
going.
back. Yeah.
But it might be something we can get into him with, because he's actually contracted.
But what it might do is that it might re-energise him for the Ireland job.
Yeah.
Because if you kind of take a a sabbatical for that year.
Yeah.
As you say, you might come back energized in the last 2 years. Whereas if you're kind of going from, what was it, he took over 2013 all the way to 17, and he said, well, actually, there's a World Cup in 19, so you got to hang around for that one. You know?
And there's also a level of confusion as well that when Joe signed his recent contract, people said, "Oh, well, that rules him out with the Lions." Who do you think owns the Lions? I mean, being contracted to one of the home unions does not rule you out of doing the Lions, seeing as the Lions are owned by the home unions. And,
that's true.
You know, so it's like saying, "Oh, he can't take the Ireland job because he's coach of Leinster."
But I think the question
That would
was
never happen.
asking us on our opinion of whether we agree with it or not, or would we like to see him go?
No, because I think he's a brilliant coach and I don't want to see him leaving Ireland. But I love the Lions. I really genuinely love the Lions. I think they're brilliant, so I want to see the best coaches and the best players in place. I think he's the best coach. So would I like to see him coach the Lions in 2017? Yes.
He
I would.
probably would come up with something that nobody else would think of against New Zealand. You
He'd
know?
use a round ball or something.
He might need to. Yeah, that's confusing. They wouldn't know what to
I was
do when it
surprised that
bounced
he
normally.
wasn't co-opted into on the coaching team under Gatland.
We weren't in Wales' group in the World
No,
Cup.
true enough. That's very true. Well, one piece of news that broke today. Normally they break when we've just finished recording this. But that Rodney Ayew is leaving. Well, I mean, it wasn't really news. It was quite an open secret.
Yeah.
He was leaving to go to Ulster. You wonder then, like, if that's the breakup of Connacht. If the reports are true, obviously we don't know yet. But
If Henshaw's coming to us
Henshaw's
as
coming
well.
to us.
Well, you see, I'm not.
But that's their two internationals.
I
Or
think
two
I-
of their three.
The deal. I mean, Connacht are already exempt or outside the, if you like, the normal
NIQ.
NIE/process. So it could be. Look, we need here to get some
to get up
game
there,
time.
now.
So you've got Nathan White. We'll do you a solid because there's a hole, because BJ Botha has in reality played his last game for Munster.
Yeah.
They don't expect him back this season, and he's on, and that's
His career might
so-
be over.
and
Right.
which in a way I think deserves mention. I mean, the guy has been playing in Irish rugby for now for nearly 10 years, I'd say, has he?
Is it? I'm not
Between
sure.
Ulster and Munster.
He's held up half the provincials clubs in Ireland.
He played, and he was superb when he was with Ulster. When he was in his pomp, he was
Yeah.
he was an unshakable rock.
He was.
So I mean, in fairness, he did Irish rugby some service.
He did.
You know, and he should.
And he
should be
brought on a
grateful for
few
that.
lads behind him as
Yeah,
well.
he did. Yeah,
in
I
both
mean,
provinces.
Yeah, so you know, he's done his job. He's done
Would
what he was
Stephen
paid for.
Archer be the player he is today?
Well,
without
that's it.
BJ
Can you
Botha?
imagine how bad he would be if it wasn't for Stephen BJ Bolton? No, but he's done that. I mean, there's a lot of props, the likes of Cronin, Kilcoyne, all those guys.
It's funny
They,
'cause
they don't exist. That doesn't happen in
it
isolation.
was funny that in the press was more doom and gloom with Irish rugby, that two more guys were leaving our shores to go and play abroad, which was Cronin and Sherry, I think.
And then they got
And
Yeah,
then
they both-
deals 5
there
minutes
was
later.
huge,
Not mentioned.
Oh, just like, sort of a byline that they had signed, but headline that they were under.
Well,
on,
it was actually in italics in very small type at the bottom of the classifieds.
PS.
Right? P.S. We were wrong about them lads.
They're not gone.
But so I mean, so there is a hole there for an overseas tight head, and that the deal could be, maybe Connacht deserve it. You know, maybe a really good Super 12 tight head that could be Ayew into an Irish jersey.
Super 12. Jeez, you're going back now. That's
Sorry, Super. What is it now? Super
16.
Super 16.
Super 100.
But
Just super.
like
rugby.
apparently when Ayew got his debut,
I remember when my dad first started watching the Super 12, he didn't realise that, or he first refused to watch the Super 12 because he didn't realise that it was a 15-a-side competition. He thought it was 12-a-side rugby. Anyway, go on.
I went to a Super 10 game.
That's going back a
Going
while.
back
Yeah,
history, yeah.
yeah.
So nearly the amateur days there.
Yeah, it was 93. I was going to say, well, Ayew made his debut for Ireland against Argentina on tour. Apparently, Joe Schmidt was absolutely disgusted with his fitness levels, like horrified with.
Well, you won't get away with that with Les Kiss. So
No, he's fond of the old Joe Skinner. You know, he eats a lot of it. I wouldn't like to get in between him and a dinner table. So, it's a tight head prop thing. Let's face it.
Yeah,
you know,
they are
they have
really-
to eat.
But there's certain standards that a professional prop has to adhere
Of
to.
course.
And if he's
Ulster got 3 years beyond any expectation out of Nick Williams. So they've obviously they've got form in the rehabbing of over enthusiastic eaters.
Is he a Ned Flanders type?
I've no idea.
That might cement his place in there as well.
Yeah, but one thing he certainly is he's a prospect, because I mean that guy's.
He's got the makings of a great prop
if you
player
look at
somewhere.
if you look at his pedigree, he's played some serious rugby for some
Played
serious teams.
under
before.
20s.
If he could do a Nick Williams on him and get the best out of him, he could be
Yeah.
a great prop. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, just turning the attention back towards our match against Wasps, just briefly. Like we were mentioning earlier that Wasps are only a point behind Toulon on 15. So they still have it all to play for. And, you know, pretty much any win against us will pretty much guarantee them qualification. So
Yeah.
Oh, would yeah.
this is going to be one hell of a battle.
It is. There's two groups that are open, and there's 3 groups that are just sealed up. There's 3 home quarterfinals: Racing, Leicester, and Saracens. Like, they can't be caught for a home quarterfinal after 5 rounds. So it's not exactly on a knife edge this last round.
It was
Osprey's group and our group.
The whole competition seemed to
are the two
be
that are open.
less dramatic than it was last year. You know, it's just, as you say, there was by round 5 there was 3 teams. By round 4 there was ourselves, and other Irish teams were pretty
We're
much
gone.
consigned to not qualifying. Like, it just seemed to be more predictable this year than.
Yeah.
than
I would.
last year.
Less teams,
I'd have to
more
disagree.
predictable.
I think we're going into the last weekend, and there's still plenty of teams in.
There
play.
is, but there's
There
3
are 10
qualified.
teams for
Yeah.
8 places. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I suppose when you think about it that way.
Uh,
But there's still. I mean, there's a
two
lot of
two
live,
of the second place
And
teams.
one
there's
of
an
them-
awful lot of live games. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean,
I'm not saying it's going to be boring. I'm just saying, you know, the way the table used to go up and down. at the
it's
end
not
of
it's
the
not
Heineken
patching the way it
Cup.
was. It's not patching the way it was. But
It's not gonna
those
happen.
days are gone now, and in the past they shall remain.
I know,
It
but
used to
like
be
last
2.
year it was, Dave. Last year was, you know, it was sort of like what the Heineken Cup used to be. It was, as John was saying, who's in the top 8, or, you know, and then someone dropped out, someone went in, and that was going on.
Maybe my memory's fault. It's just my memory of last year is that it was
I-
all fairly.
No, because I tell you,
Sedentary.
I remember it was on the Sunday, the final Sunday of the competition. I was in Coventry
You could run the right.
in a boozer, watching it, and
That's true.
Who-
yeah, it
who
did
will
shift a
win?
bit. But like, there are now 8 places, but there were always 8 places, but there was 5. There's 5 pools now, so instead of 2 teams out of 8 getting into the quarterfinals in second place, it's 3 teams out of 5. Sorry, 2 teams out of 6. It's 3 teams out of 5.
Mm.
So only 2 teams are going to miss out, whereas it used to be 4 teams missing out. So just by that alone, it's got to be
That's
a lot tighter.
Yeah.
You know, there are only effectively 10 teams in it, and only one of the top 2, only in one group are the top 2 teams playing each other, which is Leicester and Stade Francais. The rest are all playing lesser teams. Another interesting thing, actually, we didn't mention from last week. It was the first round of the Champions Cup where all the home teams won. Every single one was a home win. Hasn't happened before this year.
One thing actually that is because we often highlight how poorly the Pro 12 does on certain. Did pretty well this weekend.
It was a pretty good weekend, yeah.
Yeah,
for
3
Pro
wins.
12, yeah, and 3 in the Amlin
In
as
the
well.
Amlin as well, yeah.
So that was pretty decent.
Yeah, I was impressed with that.
50% record. So that was pretty
Unfortunately, we're going to have nobody in the top. We might have the Ospreys.
Yeah.
and possibly Ulster.
good. Ospreys and Ulster, I think. Might make it.
Unfortunately, the Ospreys and the Ulster are the Ospreys and Ulster are kind of vying with each other.
The Ospreys.
The Ospreys are vying with each other, so
Yeah.
it's possible they could both get in, but
Well, I think Ospreys have a harder fixture. They play Exeter
Yeah.
in
They do.
Exeter.
The only thing is
they're
that
guaranteed
that
a home
yeah,
quarter final almost if they win.
if they win, they're through. Whereas, and it doesn't impact on Ulster's position in terms of it won't be one of the second place positions gone. So there is that. I mean,
The other team,
Yeah, well, that group, if it's really bad for Ulster if the Ospreys win, because
Yeah.
Claremont are guaranteed 5 points and they're going to be on 19.
I don't think Claremont are guaranteed 5 points.
I think they are.
the other team in our group, Bath, Toulon, play each other. The wheels really are starting to fall off Bath's
Well, actually,
season.
the last question we had on social media, I'm glad you mentioned that. The last question we had on social media comes from Alan Kavanagh. and he wants to know why we never see Bruce Craig on TV when Bath are losing. So I don't think we've seen Bruce Craig on TV for a long, long time.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that.
But it couldn't happen to a nicer
got a bit
team,
of a-
really, could it?
He's got a bit of a
it couldn't
smarmy
happen to a nicer
face.
man. I mean,
Well,
I like Bath team. I mean,
yeah,
I like their
Yeah.
players. I like their fans. It's
I like
just,
their coach, actually.
I like their coach as well. He was a good guy for Ireland. In fairness, he did. But their owner is and the way he's run.
Well,
is
look,
good.
I've never met the guy.
No,
but
but even after the terrible thing that happened in Paris,
oh yeah.
then he comes out like
The
a
next
day
day,
later
yeah.
and saying, "Oh, well, what are we going to do about rearranging the fixtures?" Like, you know, have a bit of fucking cop on and relax.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't. I wouldn't have a lot of time for him. I have a lot more time for other less popular owners than him. But mainly that's because he makes comic books and I like comic books. The thing about Bath is that they've been on a slowly downward spiral. They had a bit of a rescue last weekend. They won last weekend. Obviously they lost to us. Sorry, the weekend before last. They won. I think it was against Newcastle.
Oh, they lost to Newcastle over Christmas.
No, then it was the next match they won. They won the last match before they played us.
That's right. Yeah, I
and then-
don't remember who it is.
Yeah, neither do I. I thought it was Newcastle. Anyway, but they've been on apart from that, they've been on a fairly
Bad streak.
Bad streak. And Toulon are not the team. A Toulon team that's just had a last minute squeaker of a victory to stiffen the spine is not the team you want to play when you're feeling like that. After getting walloped by a
Bunch of kids.
bunch of academy players. So
It'd be a tough one for them.
if you're talking about a French team taking 5 points, Toulon.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Well, if they do, they're going to top the group. And Wasps are.
I don't want them to top the group. I want Bath to beat them.
Do you?
Yeah.
See, I dislike Bruce Craig so much that I don't want his team getting out of the group.
I just like the
I'd
idea
like-
of Toulon getting a 4th star.
Well, his team
Well,
won't get out of the
that
group.
team isn't good enough. It's going to be Racing or Stars.
Bath, yeah, but Bath could win 400-0 and they still won't get out of the group. Bath,
But they'll stop. They'll
no
prevent.
chance. They'll prevent Toulon.
That's
though.
what I
Yeah,
want. I
that's
don't want Toulon. No, sorry. What I want is I want Bath to lose. I just don't like them.
Well,
Bath to lose against Toulon.
I don't think so. No, I want Toulon to lose because let's face it,
Like
poor
it's-
old Mourad Boujallel. If he gets into too many semi-finals, he's going to break all the rules of the competition,
did you hear
and they're
that
going to
one?
fine him.
If they win, he's going to lose points in the top 14 next year because the bonus payments, he forgot to figure them into the salary cap.
Okay.
The bonus payments will break the salary cap. He's quite open, admitting it and saying, we're fucked.
Yeah, well, apparently the punitive charges are potentially quite huge. So,
Really?
yeah.
I mean, in
anyone
fairness to
read
him,
the-
he's been open about it.
Anyone read the Neil Francis article during the
I
week?
think you answered your own question there.
Well, he raised a very interesting point
Yeah, I thought it
about
was okay, yeah.
the French
That was quite an interesting
FFR
article.
bringing in a new basically because of the poor
Trying to
results
close the
of
door
the national team. They
after the
want to
horses bolted.
register a certain. You can only have a certain percentage of your squad
Oh,
registered
yeah, right. Yeah.
as, and they must have been registered before they were 16
GIF,
or 18.
yeah.
GIF, yeah.
J-Fifth.
Stay
And,
fit.
yeah, he was kind of saying that it could have ramifications for the French clubs letting go.
Will
their-
they be able to
like,
impose it though?
Well, I don't know, but
No chance.
he said like it was interesting to see some of the statistics. Like I think Clermont had 56% of its squad were non-French,
hmm
which is quite a large.
But there's anomalies in there because, for example, the Armitage brothers who have both played for England are GIF qualified.
Are they really?
Yeah, they're from
Whereas-
French Guiana.
Well, no, it's because they were domiciled there as teenagers.
Yeah,
Now, they
but-
weren't actually in an academy,
They're the French nationals by birth.
but they were playing. But that's not the relevant point. The relevant point is they were playing in a French.
No, possibly, yeah. But
It's
well,
supposed to
there's
be a
number of
French
relevant
academy.
points.
That's the rules. It's this GIF qualification thing. It's to do with playing underage rugby in France.
It's almost impossible not to be qualified under that. Yeah.
Well, there's a few people who aren't. For example, your man, the Georgian guy, who played all of his rugby. What's his name? Godzilla.
Rugadzi.
He played all of his rugby in France pretty much from a very early age, but he just didn't get in quite early enough to be GIF. That's the other thing. You don't have to be a French qualified player. In fact, there are examples of players who are qualified to play. I've just given you two, three, the Armitage brothers and him. But there are also people who have the opposite, that they're actually qualified to play for France, but they're not GIF qualified players. So, it's quite French.
The thing about the French is they do things their own way. It's hard to know. I've read stuff about that. I know that some of the journalists who write for Midi Olympique have said that there's no way that they're going to get this through whatsoever.
Well, one final point. There was quite a few sightings today. The commissioner will be busy.
There was a lovely mixed bag, if you'll pardon the pun. Ryan Wilson was cited for a bag tug.
Was that the official wording?
Bollock twister.
Yeah, a testicle twisting. Torsion test on on Dixon, aptly enough. T.R. Thomas of Dragons was cited for biting.
That's bad.
So we've had a bag tug, a bite. Chris Ashton was cited for gouging.
Yeah, that was poor. Actually.
Inappropriate contact with the IRI area. Your man Cookie Ashvili, whatever his name is, at Claremont, was cited for pushing over the referee or shoving.
And
the
it
referee.
was Wayne Barnes.
I can't understand how how Wayne Barnes didn't red card him.
He was quite restrained from Barnes, and probably more common sense came in there.
I think Barnes has matured quite a lot.
Put it this way: if Ospreys had lost, and your man is cited, and he gets the 24 weeks he's probably going to get for physical a thing of a ref, how narked would Ospreys be that he was on the pitch for the remaining 60 minutes? So it's a serious issue. So we had the biting. There was also the usual mixed bag of punching and stuff like that. So
well, there was a Glasgow guy came on and he said he was on for about 4 minutes.
Yes, yeah.
And he again probably cost his side. It was in the last few minutes, gave away a penalty, up the side, and the Saints went up the line with that, but just right in front of the touch judge's view.
Discipline is so important. I mean, it's all very well been fired up.
You're going to get somebody, get him at the bottom of a ruck where you can't be seen.
And the thing is, there's nowhere you can't be seen these days.
No, it's true. There's so many.
The thing is, you've got to.
There are deep recesses to where the sun doesn't shine, that you can still.
Ryan Wilson thought that too. But the best way to hurt someone is to beat them. Doing stuff like that only hurts your own team. It hurt Glasgow.
And if someone gets a yellow card in a game for a dig, and it's kind of that's the end of it. When you start getting banned for 3 and 4 matches, that's really going to hurt. It's going to hurt your career, and your payback. I presume.
I thought I was kind of dreading the release of the citing news because I thought Bentio would get cited. That
was rather silly, wasn't it? There was no need for that.
Yeah. It's that bit of biff that they like that in rugby league, and it's a mindset. They like a bit of biff, as they call it. And it's not tolerated in Union. It's just not. And he was very lucky that he didn't get cited for that because if it was last year or the year
he's
before,
lucky he didn't get a yellow card.
It was the hot button topic.
I don't know whether it definitely didn't warrant a red card, but he could. I've seen yellow given for less. In fairness,
he's very lucky to stay on the pitch, John.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think he would have been red carded.
Possibly not, but it still would have been exciting. In previous years, I think it would have been because that was much more of a hot topic than it is now. I mean, there's other topics now.
Especially during the World Cup.
Tackles without the arms are the things now.
Yeah,
it is,
right.
And they mentioned it on the commentary. That was really hot during the World Cup was tackling around the neck and rolling, the crocodile roll.
Yeah.
But you've seen it now, and I haven't really seen it too often being penalised.
Furlong was done for a no arms tackle actually, and it was just a penalty.
He just stood there.
Luckily,
Did you see the tackle that Ashley Johnson put in on Brian Habana?
Yes.
What was the commentator said? He atomised him. He really did. And the referee looked at it. The referee looked at it. He said because he wanted to check the arms, but I just think he wanted to see the tackle again because it was an absolute cracker. The guy was flattened.
Well, he's the guy who took our Dave Carney out in the first
minute.
That should have been red carded.
Your man got 10 minutes, and Dave Carney missed
the remainder of the season.
78 minutes of that game, and you say the rest of the season.
Yeah, that was harsh.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, boys, as ever, thanks very much, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.